Data is not a topic that would usually excite many people, but something rather dramatic is occurring. Data is suddenly very happening. The scientists who can master it are the new rock stars of the corporate world. The amount of digital data being created, stored and processed is truly mind-boggling. So today we ask, does it really change everything? Each week, influential business leaders gather in London for the BBC Radio 4 programme, The Bottom Line. And you can see it as well as hear it.
This is the news at 2 o'clock. This is Charlotte Greaves, the shipping forecast. Listen to United Radio FM. And we get on to business now with The Bottom Line. Presenting.
Let's just take a few minutes to briefly meet each of my three guests. And first, someone who creates data and uses it, Conrad Feldman, co-founder and chief executive of Quantcast, which is a digital advertising company. Based in San Francisco, Conrad, we're going to hear much more detail about what your company does later in the programme. But just to be clear, digital advertising, you're not creating the ads in the way that an advertising agency might. What do you do?
So we help the brands that have the ads get those ads in front of the right people that will find that advertising relevant so they can influence their behaviour and hopefully make advertising a better experience for all consumers.
Right, so we get the right ad and we're not wastefully bombarded with rubbish that we don't want. Okay, also with me, and this time on the storage side, Lawrence Jones, founder and chief executive of UK Fast. Lawrence, you're a web hosting and data storage company.
Yep.
You're based in Manchester.
Indeed.
We'll talk about the location decision in a little bit. So how many websites do you host? How much data do you store?
Easily over 500,000. It's difficult to quantify.
500,000 websites?
Easily, yeah. It's difficult to...
I mean, some of those are going to be really important and big, presumably, and some very small. Who are some of your clients?
I suppose the bigger ones, quite a few for the government. Some I'm not allowed to talk about, so I probably better keep those quiet. But NHS, Experian, so Credit Expert, websites that you might see on the
you might
internet.
actually use.
I mean, if I look at the TV, it's probably 6 out of the 8 adverts will be on our network. Everything from Kentucky Fried Chicken to literally everything. Our responsibility now to the British public and to British businesses is phenomenal.
Thank you for that, Lawrence. Well, my third guest is Dave Coplin. If Lawrence stores data and Conrad uses it, you're harder to categorise, Dave. You're the Chief Envisioning Officer for Microsoft in the UK. You explain.
Yeah, sure. I got into IT thanks to BBC Two, 6 o'clock Tuesday nights, Star Trek. And the point about Star Trek is it teaches you when you're a gullible, naive kid like I was, that technology is supposed to be a force for good in society. It's supposed to help society achieve great things. Then fast forward to 20 years in the IT industry and you walk away with this sort of overbearingly cynical view that actually technology started to become a constraint, a prison, rather than enabling us to do great things. And if we can help you understand what we think the future of society is going to look like, how are people going to work, how they're going to live, why would this help them to do things differently, then all of a sudden people aspire to do more things with technology, and they aspire to do this really special thing, which is to do things differently than they've ever done them before. And that's my job really, is to tell that story and help people understand the potential.
Let's talk data now. And I thought we might divide this discussion into two. We could talk about the storage side first, big business in itself, and then talk about the use of all the data that is being collected. On storage, though, the sheer quantity of data being generated is absolutely enormous, isn't it? I think Eric Schmidt of Google has some key factoid, doesn't he? Dave, you probably know it better than I do.
Yeah, much as it burns me to give Eric Schmidt some airtime, it's basically from the beginning of time as a society to 2003, we created X amount of data. And his claim is basically we create the same amount of data now every 2 days. So in terms of, I mean, it's just, phenomenal.
I think we need to get Eric a calculator there, because I think that's probably...
You don't believe it? You don't believe it?
Well, no, I don't think it's that much. And also, even if it was, I think there's a lot of data that doesn't need to be stored.
Lawrence, describe what a data storage centre looks like.
They're quite hostile environments, really. There'll be huge gates with razor wire, security officers. They'll be patrolled and manned 24 hours a day, and it's prison fencing. So and then obviously once you get in, there'll be biometric security, so thumbprints. Only the right people can get into the right room at the right time. And then you've got the corridors, so what we call cold air containment, where you've got freezing cold air being pumped through the floor in a contained corridor, and then the servers will suck out the hot air through them. So, well, they'll suck the cold air through, but by the time it comes through in that split second, the air is incredibly hot. So these outer aisles are very similar to getting off a plane at the Maldives or, a lovely hot destination. And you remember that feeling when you're hit with a wall of heat. Well, you come out of one of the cold aisles into that, and that's what it feels like. So you can't really dress for the right occasion. So one minute you're working in this freezing cold environment, the next minute you need to be in a t-shirt. So,
and you don't really have that many people working there, presumably.
No, we try and limit the number of people there. And actually, in all of our buildings, we're quite unusual. We own the land and we built the data centers ourselves. So, and we've put extra floors in there. So we've put, arcade machines, bean bags, really nice, relaxing areas for the guys and girls there. Because the other thing is you need air defenders as well. They're incredibly noisy. So it's like being not too far away from a jet engine. So, and this is the internet. This is what the internet actually...
This is what the industrial landscape looks like now, basically.
This is the future. It's extraordinary, really.
When we're building data centers, one of the considerations in terms of locating them is the cost of power. Because, if you can be close to hydroelectric power, for example, the cost of power is a lot less.
You're lucky in America. You've got it made. I mean, they're selling your utilities a lot cheaper. In Britain, if you wanted hydroelectric power, because we've got a scheme at the moment where it's a 3-year scheme where we're trying to build some hydroelectric power stations over in North Wales, where I come from.
You're going to build the hydropower stations to power your own
Our future
farm.
is in power eventually, because this is ultimately the largest cost that we need to control. We're using more power than probably all the hospitals in Manchester put together, just in our 4 little data centres.
One of the facilities we've just commissioned in Cheyenne, Wyoming, is actually based at a wastewater treatment plant, and we use it's 100% powered by biofuel from the wastewater treatment plants.
But you can do that when your data's not that important. But if your data needs to be connected to everybody instantaneously, you can't just put it in the middle of nowhere. You need to be right in the heart.
Why? Because it takes time to get.
Yeah, light only travels so fast.
Yeah, so
and actually, it's a real consideration for these systems.
Yeah, so for us, because of the type of clients that we have, because it's very much driven on e-commerce, Manchester is a perfect environment. It's central, and it will win, I think, over London eventually.
The middle of the UK.
Yeah, but in the same way as the Industrial Revolution started in Manchester because the canals connected it to the whole of the UK.
At the moment, you get your energy from utilities supplying energy to Manchester.
Yeah.
And they can meet the demand that you've got. And what about the growth? I mean, if you want to grow, is that...
Well, it's very tricky. You have to, like in any business, you have to plan for the future. But energy is... There's a shortage in the UK. And in the cities particularly. But there are a few areas, for example, Trafford Park, where, there was the heart of the Industrial Revolution, where there's huge amounts of energy going into, quite literally, going into building the data centers there because there's some spare capacity. But the problems are that capacity runs out very, very quickly. So, but we know we're going to need it in the future. So, for example, what we've had to do is almost sign up to an over-provision, and so we're paying for energy we're not using, but it stops our competitors from getting it and setting up next door. So it's not ideal, but you have to do it.
And what are the advantages for a company in this area hiring you as opposed to having their own smaller data center? Is it quite difficult? Because you do have your own
We have our own data centers. We operate at a pretty significant scale. We have about 18 data centers worldwide, and we're processing massive amounts of data, as much as 30 petabytes a day.
Just take us through the terminology. You referred to petabytes there. Dave, maybe you can take us up through the...
don't ask me that. I can never remember. Petabyte is a million or a billion?
A petabyte is 1,000 million bytes. So you have a byte, a kilobyte, megabyte, gigabyte, terabyte.
And Tera, just stop you on Tera. Yeah. Tera we're almost at home, right? I mean...
right.
Because you'll buy a hard drive that's half a terabyte now, basically. I mean, that's not untypical. 500 gigabytes.
Yeah.
Right, so a terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes, and then goes up.
Goes up from there. It goes up in multiples of 1,000. So one up from a terabyte is a petabyte, and above that you have an exabyte. Right. One way of thinking about processing data is how we as humans do it. So one way of thinking about processing speed is reading. So we can read about 250 words a minute, And if that was translated into bytes, that'd be a little over 1 kilobyte a minute. So a petabyte of data would take a person reading 24/7 more than 1 million years. It would take the entire population of the UK more than a week to read a petabyte of data.
Right.
So these numbers are enormous.
These are large numbers. Okay. Sorry, that was just a digression. We were hearing about, we've got the description of the kind of facilities. There are a lot of these facilities. What distinguishes the people who, in the business, though, here? Because, Lawrence, I mean, what's your competitive advantage? Just that you have them? Or are the margins incredibly low? Is it just a commodity business, or are you...
We're managed hosting, so fundamentally it's about being able to pick up the phone. We're the fourth emergency service. We're the people that you really don't want to have to call, but if you do, we're there for you. And we have a clean room, within the data center as well. So if anything goes wrong and we aren't even able to recover the actual backup, if the hard drive's completely failed, we can rebuild any type of hard drive. We'll be a little bit more expensive, I would imagine, than some other hosting providers. But then again, with that peace of mind that you really genuinely need an organisation like us behind you when you're running a business that hosts your crown jewels.
The data stored somewhere like your facilities, Lawrence, how secure is it? Is there a possibility that there will be a magnetic storm or something from the sun that will suddenly wipe it all out? Or is there a day we're going to wake up and the banks are going to say, holy moly, it's all gone wrong and we've lost all the data that was in your account? Is that physically possible?
You have different types of solutions for different types.
So you don't put all your eggs in one basket, presumably.
No, I mean, for example, we've got multiple data centers. So the top end clients. This isn't for everybody though, but the top end clients will have things that automatically fail over to other environments. But most, and I would like to think most hosting providers will do this, and they will they'll back up off-site. So every server that you have, you would expect that backup to be taken nightly, or sometimes you might want to do it every hour.
Does it worry you, Dave, how much reliance we've all put on these facilities now?
Not at all. I mean, what would worry me more is if these organisations were still serving them. I mean, in the old days, if you had a server, it was probably under your desk and people would kick the cable as you walked past and you wouldn't know it was, So we're in a lot better place. And then, just moving up a level of scale, we operate a series of global data centres for our biggest customers. So we have global failover. So in the event that there would be an earthquake in Manchester, or what happened recently with the main fibre cable gets disconnected to the country, actually we're okay. Service won't be as great as if you were coming into Manchester, but at least you've still got
when
service.
When did we lose fibre?
It was a few months ago. Did you see that?
These things happen all the time, actually. The internet's a highly distributed system, and it's sort of designed to deal with individual pieces failing. But when you have lots of data centers, you have to monitor and keep track of this. So if one piece fails, you can redirect traffic automatically. You can't have a person doing it. It takes too long. It's got to be automatic failover to a different data center.
But the data has to be in more than one place for this to work, doesn't it? I mean,
the information you want to be able to serve needs to be in more than one place. And so there's different levels of replication of data depending upon how critical the service is.
All right. I think we've got to grips with data storage. The reason you store data, of course, is because you want to use it in some way. So let's talk about the ways in which data can be used, how disruptive it is to existing businesses with data on this volume being generated and processed. And one good example, there are many applications, but one very good example is advertising, which brings us to your business. Conrad, tell us what you do with data, what data you create and what you do with it.
So we help website owners and advertisers understand who the audiences are that are consuming online digital media. And our customers are people, newspapers like The Guardian and The Telegraph. They are magazines like The Economist and Time, and lots of newer media companies, people like the WordPress blogging platform and LinkedIn. And what we developed is a way of instrumenting that media consumption and then analyzing large amounts of data to understand who the audience is, what are their demographics, what are their interests.
So I go to a newspaper website.
Uh-huh.
What happens and what do you do with it?
So when you go to that website, if the website is using our service, they have a measurement tag from Quantcast on their website so that they can measure the fact that your browser is reading that newspaper.
So the data in this particular case is me reading the newspaper, an incident.
That's right.
And so what do you then do with that data?
So then we amass that data actually from a lot of different websites, literally over 100 million web destinations. So it's a huge amount of information, and we apply sophisticated software it's based on mathematical modeling to help us understand and estimate the characteristics of the audience, which could be sort of very, very sort of standard demographics, things like age and gender or income, but also more sort of lifestyle characteristics, what people are interested in.
Sorry, do you mean you're trying to find a file on me that logs my income, my gender, my age, or on the audience in general?
On the audience in general, we're trying to. So very importantly, we don't know anything about any individual. Our systems don't use what's called personally identifiable information.
And isn't the really useful bit when you can tell them about me, and then they can advertise something to me that I'm likely to use, as opposed to something to the other person logging into the same page? But you must be doing a bit of that as well. Right?
We are. Right. In fact, when advertising is more relevant, it's more useful, and it creates more value. And most of the media we enjoy online is free. It's actually supported by advertising. So some of the websites we work with just use our free measurement product, which helps them understand in aggregate the characteristics of the audience. Many others that we work with actually do use our technology to help make a decision as to which advertisement you would most likely find more relevant.
And how would you do that? How would you determine which one I should? What sort of things are you looking at?
So actually, what we're looking at are media consumption histories, the types of media that individuals consume. And from that, we look back and use a mathematical model to find the patterns of activity that are predictive of that outcome.
So your client might be a UK newspaper.
Yep. Or the
but
advertiser.
It might be an advertiser selling, I don't know, golfing products. Might be a good example. Let's say it's a golfing products company, and the golfing products company wants to know who out of the billion people using the internet it should target its ads at.
That's right.
And do you think you can tell by looking at whether they read golfing magazines, for example?
So, yes. What we're doing is working out in real time, literally, as the page is rendering, is this consumer likely to find this relevant? And if so, we can cause the advert to be served.
And how do you do that in real time? How, as I'm logging on,
Yep.
do you determine this is one of the people who we should be selling golf equipment to?
Right. So what's really interesting is happening increasingly in digital advertising is in the time it takes to render the page. When you go to a website and the page appears, actually in the time that's occurred, there's been an auction that's taken place for the ad space. And there are often thousands of different participants, of which we would be one, who are bidding for the right to show a particular advertisement.
The sorts of amounts being paid for those ads are tiny penny.
That's right.
Less than pennies. I mean, they're tiny.
Often it's fractions of a penny for each individual one.
I think I've understood your business, Conrad. That is just one example of use of big data, isn't it?
The possibilities are enormous. And lots of innovation has come out of advertising companies in the big data space. But big data is going to transform every aspect of industry and government.
Right. So let's have some other examples of things that this approach is going to do. Careers that you could have taken, Conrad.
So I think two of the most exciting areas are in healthcare and education. You know, these are areas where we are used to sort of one-size-fits-all approaches, and the availability of data on learning progress. Think about online courses that people take, and when people are taking different exams at different stages of learning about a subject and making different mistakes, computers, machine learning can analyze those and decide which things do people not understand, so it can then customize, personalize the educational materials for individuals. In healthcare, both from sort of a managed facility, a hospital perspective where lots of data is collected, but also increasingly from the devices that we as consumers have. You know, we have watches now that keep track of your pulse and your skin temperature and so on. All of this data can be analyzed to find patterns that are useful in finding better procedures and providing advice in aggregate, what works best, but also things that are tailored to the individual.
Yeah. So we have a service built on that principle called HealthVault, and so essentially it's live in America. It's available in the UK, but it's used more extensively in America. Let me sort of give you the British example. If I've got diabetes, I'm taking a whole bunch of data about myself every day. I'm probably doing my blood sugar 3 times a day. That data stream is really valuable. If you're the British Diabetes Association and you're doing a whole bunch of research, that data is really valuable. And what we found you can do by brokering a deal, basically, you enable the British Diabetes Association to come to the individual and say, listen, if you allow us access to that data, not everything about you, but just these specific elements about your health and your diabetes, we'll give you wellness and lifestyle advice. And in return, we get to use your data in our research. And so you get this much broader picture about what's going on that enables humans to take much more control of how they live their lives, rather than being succumbing to one big service.
Two other quick areas I want to talk about. Privacy, because of course a lot of this data is about somebody or about me. A lot of the time, the way it works and why it's big data is that I haven't even registered that I'm a subject of this data. Do we need to worry about that? I mean, I suppose people worry about privacy in different ways.
Everybody needs to be much more aware of the value of their data. And one of the things, you'll often hear, kids today, they don't care about their privacy like we used to. I don't buy that myth. I actually think they're a bit more astute as to what they get in return for the exchange. But then, like we were talking about all of the wonderful things big data can bring to society, equally it brings challenges to privacy too. There's a concept called differential privacy that we spent a lot of time working on, which is essentially if you take two really big data sets but on a similar topic, both anonymized, so there is no personal information, you can actually bring the two data sets together and start to triangulate, try to identify individuals. And that was like 96% confidence. And so we're doing a whole bunch of work now about how do you make sure that people's privacy remains intact. So let me give you a real life example. Smart meters, fantastic, brilliant for consumers.
Electric meters.
Electric meters, yeah. So my utility meter is making a really granular record of the energy I'm consuming. Brilliant for the consumer because I'm empowered now to use more or less. Brilliant for the energy company because it enables them to do microbilling and all that sort of stuff. Horrible from a privacy perspective. When I put the kettle on, when I turn the bathroom light on, when I'm home. So we're doing some work there to help, again, to obfuscate the personal information, but still make sure that everybody has the control that they want to.
Just a quick one on the security in the sense of tampering or getting into it. I mean, there have been a lot of revelations, Lawrence, about security authorities, the NSA, GCHQ, having access to all of this data. Is that a concern to your clients, to you?
It would appear so. We've seen an upsurge in number of government organisations knocking on our door asking for help.
Government, what? British government? British
government organisations. We're British. And we don't have but the American organisations have something called the Patriot Act, where they have to make available anything that the American government wants to see.
Only by law. So they can't. The American government can't just walk up and say, "Can I have a look?" They basically have to turn up with a subpoena and a whole bunch of paperwork that says, not just I want to see everything about Lawrence, this specific individual, this specific service.
But it's big enough. The concern is big enough. You've got governments like the Chinese government who can access anything, and that
allegedly.
Governments have more power than most to tamper with, access, and look at stuff, which makes enormous sense because they are trying to maintain our security.
But ethically, it makes good sense to buy British.
But effectively, you're saying that is inducing clients to retreat back to their national boundaries.
Huge for us. I mean, we've had 20 so. Inquiries in the last couple of weeks. So something's been, something's happened. Definitely.
It's a fascinating discussion. Look, just one last one. The people who are working in this, I mean, you're running the companies, right? At the beginning, I said data scientists are the sort of new rock stars. It's true, isn't it? I mean, we don't hear a lot about these people outside your world, but they are really crucial.
Absolutely. I think that data science is hugely important. And certainly for my son, maths and stats, whether he likes it or not, I want him because they're going to be so important for him in his world of work.
Yeah, data science is a data scientist has sort of a combination of skills, each of which are often in short supply. There's part computer programmer, part statistician, part anthropologist, part storyteller. And really good data scientists comprise all of those. And certainly... There's certainly a shortage of people with those sorts of skill sets.
Oh, so that's some advice to young people. But I said they're the corporate rock stars, but it's probably not as much fun as being a rock star, is it? Or...
Depends how much you like maths.
It's quite good
fun. I think it's better than a rock star, really, because you get to earn big salaries. Drive to work, have a BMX in your car park space, and no one knows who you are, but you can have this anonymity. So
the parties aren't as good, though.
We're going to draw to a close there. Let me thank Conrad Feldman of Quantcast, Lawrence Jones of UK Fast, and Dave Coplin of Microsoft UK. I will be back with more guests next week. Don't forget that downloads of The Bottom Line are available. Details are on our website. And of course, you can always listen to it on BBC Radio 4. We also like to get your emails. Just drop us a line at thebottomline@bbc.co.uk.